Noah Callahan never imagined that delivering Thai food to Manhattan's elite would change his life forever. Standing in the marble foyer of a penthouse that cost more than he'd earn in 10 lifetimes, he watched a woman collapse to the floor, her breath coming in desperate gasps. While others might have called 911 and waited, Noah recognized the signs. His daughter Emma had the same severe allergies. Without hesitation, he grabbed the worn EpiPen from his delivery bag and saved Sabrina Langford's life. 24 hours later, Noah found himself staring at an invitation that would reshape everything he thought he knew about second chances, family, and the bridges that connect two very different worlds. But what if the woman whose life he saved was hiding secrets that could destroy the fragile trust they were building? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The alarm clock's shrill cry pierced through Noah Callahan's thin apartment walls at exactly 5 a.m., the same jarring sound that had greeted him every morning for the past 2 years. He reached over to silence it before it could wake Emma, his, and automatically finding the worn button in the darkness. The small studio apartment held the quiet intimacy of early morning, Emma's soft breathing from the pull-out couch they shared, the distant hum of traffic already building on the street below, and the persistent drip from the kitchen faucet he kept meaning to fix. Noah's feet hit the cold linoleum floor, and he moved through his morning routine with the practiced efficiency of a man who had learned to compress his entire existence into the spaces between his daughter's needs. Coffee first, instant black, no time for anything fancy. While it cooled, he laid out Emma's clothes for the day. The purple dress with tiny flowers that made her feel like a princess, clean socks without holes, and the worn sneakers he bought at the thrift store 3 months ago. The hand-drawn picture taped to their small refrigerator caught his eye as he poured Emma's cereal, a stick figure in a delivery uniform with "Daddy at Work" written in purple crayon across the top. She'd drawn it last week after he'd tried to explain why he had to work so many jobs. In her 6-year-old world, Daddy was a hero who brought food to people, not a man drowning in medical bills and barely keeping their heads above water. "Good morning, sunshine," Noah whispered as Emma stirred, her dark hair so much like her mother's spread across the pillow like silk. She opened brown eyes that held Sarah's gentle spirit, and Noah felt that familiar tug in his chest, the bittersweet recognition of the woman he'd loved reflected in their daughter's face. "Is it in time for school?" Emma asked, stretching her small arms above her head. "Not yet, sweetheart. Mrs. Chen's first." Noah helped her sit up, already reaching for her EpiPen case, the bright red bag that went everywhere Emma went, a constant reminder of how fragile life could be. 2 EpiPens, Benadryl, emergency contact cards. Sarah had taught him the routine. Before the cancer took her voice, then her breath, then everything else. The memories came in waves sometimes, triggered by the smallest things. Sarah lying in the hospital bed, her hand weak in his, making him promise to keep Emma safe, to not let the fear of her allergies steal her childhood. The insurance company's rejection letters, the second mortgage on a home they'd already lost, the funeral expenses that had pushed them from struggling to drowning. "Daddy, you're making your sad face," Emma said, her small hand touching his cheek. At 6, she was already too observant, too attuned to the weight he carried. "Just thinking about how much I love you," Noah said, which was true enough. He kissed her forehead and helped her into her clothes, checking the EpiPen case one more time before they headed out into the morning. Mrs. Chen's daycare occupied the ground floor of a converted brownstone 6 blocks from their apartment. The elderly woman had been running the place for 30 years, and her rates were the only ones Noah could afford. She greeted them at the door with the warm smile that had made Noah trust her with his most precious possession. "Morning, Noah. Morning, Emma Bean," Mrs. Chen said, accepting the bag of Emma's allergy-safe snacks and lunch. She knew the routine as well as Noah did. No shared utensils, careful hand-washing, Emma's special place at the table away from potential allergens. "Be good for Mrs. Chen," Noah told Emma, kneeling to her level. "I'll see you tonight after work." "All 3 jobs?" Emma asked, a question that made Noah's chest tighten. "Just 2 today. I'll be home for dinner." He hugged her tight, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo, trying to memorize the feeling of her small arms around his neck. The walk to his car gave Noah a few minutes to shift mental gears, to transform from devoted father to whatever the day demanded of him. His Honda Civic had seen better decades. The paint was faded, the air conditioning was broken, and the passenger side door required a specific technique to open. But it was paid for, and in Noah's world, that made it perfect. His phone buzzed. With the day's delivery assignments, 12 orders to start, scattered across Manhattan like breadcrumbs, leading him through a maze of traffic, impatient customers, and parking tickets he couldn't afford. Noah clipped the phone to his dashboard and pulled into traffic, becoming one of thousands of invisible workers who kept the city fed, connected, and functioning. The contrast between his world and the world he served became more stark with each delivery. From walk-up apartments where he climbed 5 flights of stairs for a $2 tip, to glass towers where doormen in uniforms nicer than his best clothes accepted packages on behalf of people he'd never see. Noah had learned not to take it personally, not to let resentment build in the spaces between orders. Everyone was just trying to make it through their day, same as him. His best friend Marcus called during the lunch rush, his voice crackling through the car's ancient speakers. "How's the grind today?" Marcus asked. He understood the rhythm of Noah's life because he lived a similar one. Single dad, multiple jobs, dreams deferred for the sake of small people who needed them to be heroes. "Same as always. You?" Jamal's school called. "Kid's been acting out again." Marcus's son was 8 and still struggling with his mother's departure 2 years ago. "Sometimes I think we're all just pretending we know what we're doing." "Welcome to parenthood," Noah said, pausing at a red light. "At least our kids are fed, loved, and safe. Some days, that feels like winning the lottery. Speaking of which, you enter that thing this week?" Noah laughed, a sound with more resignation than humor. "Marcus, I don't have $5 for coffee, let alone lottery tickets." "Fair point. Hey, Emma still on for Jamal's birthday next weekend? Wouldn't miss it." Noah glanced at the delivery address on his phone, a penthouse on the Upper East Side. "Listen, I've got a delivery to Richie Rich. Land talk tonight? Be careful up there, man. Don't let them make you feel small." But as Noah stood in that marble foyer, 12 hours later, watching a woman collapse to the floor in the throes of a severe allergic reaction, he realized that sometimes the universe had plans that made all their careful routines irrelevant. Sometimes a delivery driver from Queens became the difference between life and death for someone whose name he didn't even know. The rest happened in slow motion and lightning speed simultaneously, his hands moving without conscious thought, finding the backup EpiPen in his delivery bag, the one he carried everywhere because Emma's reactions were unpredictable, because being prepared was the difference between panic and action. The satisfying click of the injector against the woman's thigh, her breath returning in ragged gasps that sounded like the most beautiful music Noah had ever heard. When the paramedics arrived, when the questions were answered, when Noah finally made it home to Emma that night, he couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted. Not just because he'd saved someone's life, but because of the way the woman, Sabrina, the paramedics had called her, had looked at him in those final moments before they'd taken her to the hospital. Like she'd seen something in him that he didn't even know was there. 24 hours later, when the elegant invitation arrived at his door, Noah stared at the expensive paper and careful calligraphy and wondered if the universe was finally ready to cut him a break, or if it was just setting him up for the biggest fall of his life. The invitation arrived on a Tuesday morning, slipping through the mail slot of Noah's apartment like a whisper from another world. heavy cream paper, the kind that spoke of money and tradition, with his name written in elegant script across the front. Noah turned it over in his hands, noting the weight of it, the way it felt substantial and important, in a way that bills and overdue notices never did. Emma was at the kitchen table, carefully colouring inside the lines of her princess colouring. A book, her tongue poking out slightly in concentration. She looked up when Noah's silence stretched too long. "What's that, Daddy?" "I'm not sure yet, sweetheart." Noah opened the envelope carefully, half expecting it to be some kind of mistake. The paper inside matched the envelope. Thick, expensive, with a letterhead that simply read S. Langford in understated gold lettering. "Mr. Callahan, I would be honored if you would join me for lunch this Saturday at 1 p.m. I have a proposition that I believe will be of mutual benefit. A car will collect you at noon from your address. I realize this may seem presumptuous, but I hope you will indulge me. What you did for me goes beyond a simple thank you, and I would like the opportunity to discuss how I might properly express my gratitude. With sincere appreciation, Sabrina Langford." Below the signature was an address in the Hamptons that Noah recognized from movies and magazine articles about how the other half lived. "Is it from the Princess Lady?" Emma asked, abandoning her coloring to climb onto Noah's lap. "How did you—" Noah stopped himself. He told Emma about saving someone's life, but he'd kept the details vague. At 6, she didn't need to know about allergic reactions and EpiPens and the way people sometimes stopped breathing for no reason at all. "You told Mrs. Chen that you helped a lady who was sick. I think she must be a princess if she's sending you fancy letters." Emma traced the gold lettering with her finger. "Can I come meet her?" Noah's first instinct was to throw the invitation away. In his experience, when something seemed too good to be true, it usually was. Rich people didn't invite delivery drivers to lunch in the Hamptons. They sent thank you cards, maybe a small gift. They didn't send cars and make mysterious propositions. But the memory of Sabrina Langford's face in those final moments before the paramedics arrived haunted him. The vulnerability in her eyes, the way she'd gripped his hand and whispered thank you like it was a prayer. There had been something real there, something that transcended the marble floors and designer furniture of her penthouse. "I don't know if I'm going yet," Noah said carefully. "But you have to." Emma's eyes were wide with excitement. "She wants to say thank you properly. Mama always said that when someone wants to thank you properly, you should let them." The mention of Sarah hit him like it always did, unexpected and sharp. But Emma was right. Sarah had always been gracious about accepting gratitude, even when Noah's pride wanted to brush it off. She'd understood that sometimes letting someone thank you was a gift you gave them, not something you took for yourself. Noah called Marcus during his lunch break, sitting in his car outside a deli where he'd just delivered sandwiches to a law. "Verm, you want to run this by me again?" Marcus said after Noah explained about the invitation. "I saved her life. Now she wants to have lunch and discuss some kind of proposition." "Brother, that sounds like the setup to every bad movie I've ever seen. Rich lady, mysterious proposition, guy who needs money desperately." Marcus's voice carried the weight of hard-earned wisdom. "What do you actually know about this woman?" Noah realized he knew almost nothing. Sabrina Langford, penthouse on the Upper East Side, severe food allergies. Beautiful in a way that seemed almost fragile, like she was made of expensive glass. "Not much," Noah admitted. "And she knows your address, your full name, probably your financial situation, if she's done any digging at all." Marcus paused. "Look, I'm not saying don't go. I'm saying be careful. People like that, they don't do anything without a reason. Make sure you know what you're walking into." That evening, after Emma was asleep, Noah found himself standing at the window of their small apartment, looking out at the city lights. The invitation sat on the kitchen counter, seeming to glow in the dim light. He thought about Emma's excitement, about the way she'd asked if she could wear her best dress to meet the princess lady. He thought about the stack of bills on his desk, the notice from the electric company, the way Emma had been wearing the same pair of shoes for 3 months because he couldn't afford new ones. But mostly he thought about Sabrina Langford's eyes, and the way she'd looked at him, like he was something more than just a delivery driver who happened to be in the right place at the right time. Saturday morning arrived grey and drizzly, the kind of weather that made New York feel smaller and more intimate. Noah stood in front of his tiny closet, trying to decide what someone wore to lunch with a stranger who lived in the Hamptons. His best shirt was a button-down that Sarah had bought him for a job interview 3 years ago. His only dress pants were left over from her funeral. Emma sat on the bed, wearing her purple princess dress and a serious expression. "You look handsome, Daddy," she said, adjusting his collar with the same careful attention Sarah used to give him. "Thank you, sweetheart. Are you sure you'll be okay with Mrs. Chen for the afternoon?" "I'll be fine, but you have to promise to tell me everything about the Princess Lady's castle." At exactly noon, a black car pulled up outside their building. Not a limousine. Noah had been half expecting something ostentatious, but a sleek sedan with tinted windows and a driver who got out to open the door for him. Noah kissed Emma goodbye and walked outside, feeling like he was stepping into someone else's life. The drive to the Hamptons took an hour and a half, through neighborhoods that grew progressively more expensive with each mile. Noah watched the landscape change from urban sprawl to manicured suburbs to the kind of rolling estates he'd only seen in movies. The driver was polite but quiet, leaving Noah alone with his thoughts and his growing certainty that he was making a mistake. Sabrina Langford's estate was understated in the way that only truly wealthy people could afford. No gates or walls, just a long driveway that curved through perfectly maintained gardens to a house that managed to be both enormous and somehow welcoming. It was the kind of place that whispered money rather than shouting it. Sabrina met him at the front door herself, which surprised him. She was smaller than he remembered, more delicate, wearing a simple white dress that probably cost more than Noah made in a month, but her eyes were the same, intelligent, guarded, with depths that suggested she'd learned not to trust easily. "Mr. Callahan, thank you for coming." She extended her hand, and Noah noticed that it trembled slightly. "I wasn't sure you would." "To be honest, I almost didn't." She smiled at that, the first genuine expression he'd seen from her. "I appreciate your honesty. Would you like to see the gardens? Lunch won't be ready for a few minutes." They walked through grounds that belonged in a magazine, past flower beds that looked like they'd been arranged by an artist, and a pool that reflected the grey sky like a mirror. Sabrina moved carefully, Noah noticed, as if she was still recovering from her allergic reaction. "I've been thinking about what happened," she said as they paused by a fountain, "about how you knew exactly what to do. The paramedics said you probably saved my life. I have a daughter with severe allergies," Noah said simply. "You learned to be prepared." "Yes, I know about Emma." Sabrina's voice was soft. 6 years old, allergic to nuts and shellfish, loves purple, and wants to be a veterinarian when she grows up. Noah stopped walking. "How do you—" "I had you investigated," Sabrina said, meeting his eyes directly. "I'm sorry, I know how that sounds, but I needed to know who you were before I made you an offer that will change both our lives." The words hung in the air between them, loaded with possibility and danger in equal measure. Noah felt the ground shifting beneath his feet, the careful balance of his life tilting towards something he couldn't yet see. "What kind of offer?" he asked. Sabrina was quiet for a long moment, her fingers tracing the edge of the fountain. When she spoke, her voice carried a vulnerability that made Noah understand why she'd had him investigated. Not out of arrogance, but out of fear. "I have a daughter." "Two," she said. "Her name is Lucy. She's 7 years old, and I'm failing her in ways I don't know how to fix. I've watched the security footage from that night dozens of times, Mr. Callahan. Not the part where you saved my life. The part where you talked to me afterward. The way you stayed calm. The way you made sure I was okay before the paramedics arrived. You have something I don't have, something I need to learn. Which is how to be someone a child can depend on." Sabrina turned to face him fully. "I want To hire you, Mr. Callahan. $200,000 a year, plus housing, plus benefits. Your job would be to teach me how to be the mother Lucy deserves. Noah felt the world tilt completely off its axis. $200,000. More money than he'd made in the past 3 years combined. Enough to pay off Sarah's medical bills, to give Emma everything she needed. To stop living paycheck to paycheck and start actually living. That's impossible, he said. Is it? You saved my life with a device you carry because you love your daughter. You knew exactly how to handle a medical emergency because you've prepared for every possibility. You work 3 jobs to give Emma everything she needs, and she's clearly thriving, despite everything you've both been through. Sabrina's voice grew stronger with each word. I have all the money in the world, Mr. Callahan, but I don't know how. To make a child feel safe, I don't know how to be present, how to be patient, how to be someone worth loving. But you do. I don't know anything about teaching. You don't need to know about teaching. You need to know about being a father. And from everything I've learned about you, that's exactly what you are. Noah looked at this woman, this stranger who somehow knew more about his life than most of his friends, and realized that everything he thought he understood about his world was about to change. The question wasn't whether the offer was real. The question was whether he was brave enough to accept it. I need to think about this, he said. Of course, but Mr. Callahan. Sabrina's smile was sad and hopeful at the same time. Sometimes the best opportunities come disguised as the scariest decisions. As Noah rode back to the city that afternoon, Emma's hand-drawn picture of him at work still stuck to their refrigerator. He couldn't shake the feeling that his daughter's simple drawing was about to become something much more complicated, something that might save them all, or destroy everything they'd built together. The choice, impossibly, was his to make. Noah didn't sleep that night. He lay on the pull-out couch next to Emma, listening to her soft breathing and staring at the ceiling where a water stain had been growing larger each month. $200,000. The number felt too big to fit inside his small apartment, too impossible to be real. Emma stirred beside him, and Noah automatically reached over to check that her EpiPen case was within arm's reach. The gesture was so routine, he barely noticed it anymore. But tonight it reminded him of Sabrina's words. You carry that because you love your daughter. At 3 a.m. he gave up on sleep and moved to the kitchen table where a stack of medical bills waited in their usual spot. Sarah's final hospital stay, the experimental treatments that insurance had refused to cover, the funeral expenses that had pushed them from struggling to drowning. He'd been making minimum payments for 2 years, watching the interest compound, like some cruel mathematics problem with no solution. Noah pulled out a calculator and started running numbers. $200,000, minus taxes, minus living, expenses. Even after everything, it would be enough to pay off the debt completely, enough to give Emma a college fund, enough to stop choosing between groceries and gas money. But the price wasn't just about money. It meant uprooting Emma from the only life she'd known, moving into a world where they didn't belong, trusting a stranger with their future. It meant believing that someone like Sabrina Langford could want something from someone like him that wasn't ultimately self-serving. Daddy? Emma's voice was sleepy and confused. Why are you awake? Just thinking, sweetheart. Go back to sleep. Ah, you thinking about the princess lady? Noah smiled despite everything. Maybe a little. Emma padded over to the table in her purple pajamas and climbed onto his lap, her small body warm against his chest. She looked at the bills spread across the table with the serious expression she wore when trying to understand adult problems. Those are the sad papers that make you worry, she said. Yes, they are. If you go work for the princess lady, will the sad papers go away? The question was so direct, so innocent, that Noah felt his throat tighten. It's not that simple, Emma. Why not? How did you explain to a 6-year-old that sometimes opportunities came with hidden costs? That people who seemed too good to be true usually were. that accepting help might mean losing the independence that had kept them afloat since Sarah died. Sometimes when someone offers to help, they want something in return that might be more than we're willing to give, Noah said carefully. Emma considered this with the gravity of someone much older. Mama used to say that sometimes the scariest thing is the right thing. The words hit Noah like a physical blow. Sarah had said that, usually when she was trying to convince him to take a risk he was too afraid to take, when he'd wanted to quit his job to spend more time with Emma after the diagnosis, when she'd suggested they use their savings for one last family vacation before the treatments made her too sick to travel. You remember Mama saying that? I remember lots of things about Mama. She said that being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do the scary thing anyway. Emma looked up at him with Sarah's eyes. Are you scared of the princess lady? A little. But she needs help with her little girl, right? And you're really good at taking care of little girls. Out of the mouths of babes. Noah hugged Emma close, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo, and realized that his daughter understood the situation better than he did. The next morning, Noah called the number on Sabrina's business card. I'd like to accept your offer, he said when she answered on the second ring, but I have conditions. Of course, what do you need? I want to meet Lucy first. If Emma and I are going to be part of this, she needs to be comfortable with it too. And I want a trial period, 3 months, to see if this actually works for everyone involved. That's more than fair. Could you come back this weekend? I think it would be good for the girls to meet. One more thing, Noah said, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what he was about to commit to. If this doesn't work out, if Lucy and I don't connect, or if you change your mind, I need your word that you won't make things difficult for Emma and me. We'll go back to our life without any problems. You have my word, Mr. Callahan. And Noah, thank you. Saturday came grey and drizzly again, as if the weather was determined to match Noah's uncertain mood. Emma wore her best dress, the purple, one with tiny flowers, and carried a small backpack filled with colouring books and the stuffed elephant that had been her constant companion since Sarah's death. Are you nervous about meeting Lucy? Noah asked as they rode in Sabrina's car toward the estate. A little. What if she doesn't like me? Then we'll figure it out. But I have a feeling you two are going to get along just fine. The estate looked different in daylight, less imposing, more like a home where people actually lived. Sabrina met them at the door again, but this time she wasn't alone. Behind her stood a small girl with dark hair and serious brown eyes, wearing a white dress that matched Sabrina's but somehow looked less natural on her 7-year-old frame. Emma, this is Lucy, Sabrina said, her voice carefully neutral. Lucy, this is Emma and her father, Mr. Callahan. Lucy stepped forward with the formal politeness of a child who'd been coached on proper behavior. It's nice to meet you, she said, extending her hand for Emma to shake. Emma looked at the offered hand with confusion, then stepped forward and hugged Lucy instead. I like your dress, she said simply. Lucy's carefully maintained composure cracked slightly, and Noah caught a glimpse of what she might be like when she wasn't performing the role of a perfect child. Thank you. I like yours too. Purple is my second favorite color. What's your first favorite? Green, like trees. I love trees. Do you want to see what I brought? Emma opened her backpack and pulled out a nature book that Mrs. Chen had given her. It has all different kinds of trees, and some of them have animals living in them. Noah watched the interaction with the careful attention of a man who understood that children's first impressions could make or break everything that came after. Lucy's formal mask was slipping as Emma chatted about oak trees and bird nests, and he could see the lonely child underneath the perfect manners. Sabrina watched too, but from a distance that seemed both protective and uncertain. She held herself like someone who wanted to step closer but didn't quite know how. Why don't you show the girls to the playroom? Noah suggested. I'd like to talk with Lucy for a minute first. Lucy doesn't really play, Sabrina said quietly. She prefers reading or educational activities. Every child plays, Noah said gently. Sometimes they just need permission. He knelt down to Lucy's level, the same way he did with Emma when something important needed to be discussed. "Lucy, I heard you like to read. That's wonderful. Emma loves stories too, especially ones about animals. Do you think you could show her some of your favorite books?" Lucy glanced at Sabrina, then back at Noah. "I have a whole library." "Sabrina," she caught herself. "My mother bought me lots of books about science and history." "That sounds perfect. And Lucy, you can call me Noah if you want to. We're not being formal today." Something in Lucy's posture relaxed slightly. "Okay, Noah." The playroom was nothing like the chaotic, toy-filled spaces Noah was used to. It looked more like a museum display, shelves lined with educational toys, art supplies arranged with military precision, and not a single item out of place. Emma stood in the doorway, taking it all in with wide eyes. "Wow," she breathed. "It's like a toy store. You can touch things," Lucy said quickly, as if she'd sensed Emma's hesitation. "Sabrina says the toys are for playing with, not just looking at." But when Emma picked up a puzzle and started working on it, sitting cross-legged on the floor, Lucy stood watching instead of joining her. Noah realized that the child had been given every material thing she could need, but hadn't been taught how to simply be a child. "Lucy," he said softly, "would you like to help Emma with that puzzle? It looks pretty challenging." "I don't usually sit on the floor." "Why not?" Lucy glanced toward where Sabrina stood in the doorway, and Noah understood. The child had been taught to be perfect, to be neat, to be everything a grieving woman thought she needed in a daughter. Sometimes the best way to solve a puzzle is to get down where you can see all the pieces, Noah said, settling himself on the floor next to Emma. "What do you think, Lucy? Want to give it a try?" Slowly, carefully, Lucy sat down beside them. When her white dress spread around her on the carpet, she looked more like a 7-year-old and less like a porcelain doll. "Emma, why don't you tell Lucy about your favorite puzzle?" Noah suggested. "I have one with horses on it," Emma said, fitting 2 pieces together with satisfaction. "But some of the pieces got lost when we moved apartments, so now the horse only has 3 legs. That's sad," Lucy said seriously. "Not really. Daddy says sometimes things are still beautiful, even when they're not perfect. He says the horse probably learned to run in a special way." Noah felt his chest tighten at Emma's casual wisdom, at the way she'd turned their struggles into something hopeful. He looked up to find Sabrina watching from the doorway, her expression unreadable. "Noah," Lucy said suddenly, "do you think Emma would like to see my treehouse? It's in the back garden. I think she'd love that. Why don't you ask her? Emma, do you want to see my treehouse?" "You have a treehouse?" Emma's eyes lit up with the kind of excitement that Noah had been afraid money might steal from her. "I always wanted a treehouse." As the girls ran toward the back door, chattering about treehouses and secret hideouts, Noah stood up to find Sabrina still watching from the doorway. "She's never done that before," Sabrina said quietly. "What?" asked another child to play. "Invited someone to see her special place." Sabrina's voice carried a mixture of wonder and sadness. "I've been trying to get her to open up for months." "You've been here an hour. Children respond to authenticity," Noah said simply. "Lucy's been trying to be perfect for you. Emma doesn't know how to be anything but herself. How do I learn to be like that? How do I learn to be someone she can just be herself with?" Noah looked at this woman who had everything money could buy but didn't know how to sit on the floor with a child, and realized that maybe Sabrina's offer hadn't been about charity or guilt after all. Maybe it had been about recognizing something she desperately needed and was brave enough to ask for help getting. "We start small," he said. "We start with sitting on the floor." 2 weeks later, Noah stood in their small apartment surrounded by cardboard boxes and the accumulated weight of their entire life together. Emma sat on the floor, carefully wrapping her stuffed elephant in one of Sarah's old sweaters. Her face, a mixture of excitement and uncertainty that mirrored his own feelings exactly. "Are you sure we're doing the right thing?" Noah asked, not really expecting an answer from his 6-year-old daughter, but needing to voice the question that had been haunting him since he'd officially accepted Sabrina's offer. "Mama's recipe book is coming with us, right?" Emma asked, holding up the worn notebook that contained Sarah's handwritten instructions for everything from Emma's favorite pancakes to the soup that had gotten them through countless sick days. "Of course, sweetheart. That's not going anywhere." Noah had quit his delivery job the day before, a conversation that had felt both liberating and terrifying. His supervisor had been surprisingly understanding, even a little envious, when Noah explained he was taking a position that would allow him to spend more time with Emma, but walking away from the steady, if meager, income that had kept them afloat. Felt like stepping off a cliff and trusting that Sabrina Langford would be there to catch them. Marcus arrived as Noah was taping up the last box of kitchen supplies, his expression carefully neutral in the way that meant he had opinions. He was trying not to share. "You sure about this, brother?" Marcus asked, accepting the cup of coffee Noah offered from their nearly empty cabinet. "No, but I'm doing it anyway. Emma seems excited. Emma thinks we're moving to a fairy tale. I'm not sure she understands that this is temporary, that we're not actually part of this woman's family." Marcus was quiet for a moment, studying Noah's face with the attention of someone who'd known him long enough to read between the lines. "You worried about more than just the job, aren't you?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, Sabrina Langford is a beautiful, intelligent woman who's offering you more money than you've ever seen to help her with something deeply personal. And you're a good man who's been alone for 2 years, raising a daughter who needs stability more than anything else in the world." Noah felt his chest tighten. "This isn't about that. I'm not saying it is. I'm saying be careful that it doesn't become about that. Emma's been through enough loss." The words stung because they echoed Noah's own deepest fears. What if he started to care about Sabrina and Lucy? What if Emma got attached to this new life, only to have it disappear when Sabrina decided she didn't need them anymore? What if he was setting them both up for heartbreak in exchange for financial security? "I know what I'm doing," Noah said, but the words felt hollow even to him. "Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, you're a man who's been carrying the weight of the world for 2 years, and someone just offered to take half that weight away. That's not always a clear-thinking situation." Before Noah could respond, Emma bounced into the kitchen, her backpack stuffed with treasures she deemed essential for their new adventure. "Uncle Marcus, are you coming to see our new house?" "Maybe next weekend, Emma Bean. You'll have to tell me all about it." Marcus knelt down to her level, his expression softening. "You take care of your daddy, okay? Make sure he remembers to eat vegetables and get enough sleep." "I always take care of Daddy," Emma said seriously. "We take care of each other." The drive to the Hamptons felt different this time. Instead of a borrowed car and borrowed time, they were riding in the back of Sabrina's sedan, with all their worldly possessions following behind in a moving truck. Emma pressed her face to the window, narrating everything she saw with the enthusiasm of an explorer discovering new territory. "Look, Daddy, that house has a swimming pool, and that one has horses. Do you think Lucy's house has horses?" "I don't know, sweetheart. We'll find out together." The guest house that Sabrina had prepared for them was larger than their apartment. Had been, with 2 bedrooms, a full kitchen, and windows that looked out over gardens that belonged in a magazine. Emma ran from room to room, her voice echoing off walls that had never heard a child's laughter, claiming spaces with the confidence of someone who'd never learned to doubt her right to belong somewhere. "This is my room," she called from the smaller bedroom. "And this is where Mr. Elephant sleeps, and this window looks right at Lucy's treehouse." Noah stood in the doorway watching his daughter transform an empty room into home, with nothing more than her stuffed animal and her boundless optimism. Sarah's recipe book sat on the kitchen counter where he'd placed it first, an anchor point in this new landscape of uncertainty and possibility. Sabrina appeared at the front door as Noah was carrying in the last of their boxes, Lucy beside her. wearing another perfect white dress that made her look like she was posing for a portrait rather than meeting friends. "How do you like it?" Sabrina asked, and Noah caught the note of genuine nervousness in her voice. "It's beautiful, more than we need. I wanted you to feel comfortable. I wanted Emma to have space to be herself." Lucy stepped forward, her movements careful and controlled. "Emma, would you like to see your room? I helped pick out the furniture." "You did? That's so nice. Come see where I put Mr. Elephant." As the girls disappeared into the house, Noah found himself alone with Sabrina for the first time since that initial lunch. She looked different here, less formal, wearing jeans and a simple blue sweater that made her seem more approachable and somehow more vulnerable. "How are you feeling about all this?" she asked. "Terrified," Noah said honestly, "but hopeful too, I think. That makes two of us." Sabrina's smile was rueful. "I keep waiting for you to realize what a terrible mistake this is and pack up your daughter and leave. Is that what you think this is? A mistake? I think this is the first real chance Lucy's had to be around someone who understands what children need. I think this is the first time I've had someone to help me learn how to be the mother she deserves." Sabrina paused, looking toward the deep house where they could hear Emma's laughter mixing with Lucy's quieter responses. "But I also think I'm asking you to trust me with your daughter's happiness, and I'm not sure I've earned that yet. You saved my life too," Noah said quietly. "How? Do you figure that?" 2 weeks ago, I was working 3 jobs, barely keeping our heads above water, watching Emma grow up in daycare because I couldn't afford to be with her. You offered me a chance to be her father instead of just her provider. That's not something I take lightly. They were interrupted by Emma's voice calling from inside. "Daddy, come see! Lucy has a dollhouse with real tiny furniture." Noah smiled. "I think that's my cue." "Noah." Sabrina's voice stopped him at the door. "Thank you for trusting me with this, for bringing Emma into Lucy's world. I know it's a risk for you. It's a risk for all of us," Noah said. "But maybe that's what makes it worth taking." That evening, after Emma had fallen asleep in her new room, with Mr. Elephant tucked safely beside her, Noah sat at the kitchen table with Sarah's recipe book open in front of him. The familiar handwriting felt like a message from another life, a reminder of the woman who taught him that love wasn't about having all the answers. It was about showing up with an open heart and trusting that you'd figure out the rest as you went. He thought about Marcus's warnings, about the dangers of getting too attached to a life that might disappear as quickly as it had appeared. But he also thought about Lucy's face when Emma had hugged her goodbye, the way the formal mask had slipped completely for just a moment to reveal a lonely little girl who desperately wanted a friend. Outside his window, the main house glowed with warm light, and Noah could see Sabrina's silhouette moving through the rooms where she was learning to be someone her daughter could depend on. He didn't know what the next 3 months would bring, didn't know if this experiment in trust and hope would work out the way they all needed it to. But for the first time since Sarah's death, Noah felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be, doing exactly what he was meant to do. And maybe, he thought as he closed the recipe book and headed toward his own bed, that was enough to build on. Tomorrow he would begin the work of teaching Sabrina how to connect with Lucy, how to be present and patient and real. Tomorrow he would start earning the trust she'd placed in him and proving that some risks were worth taking. Tonight he would sleep in a house where Emma felt safe and loved, where her laughter had already begun to fill the empty spaces with something that felt remarkably like hope. 3 months into their new life, Noah stood in the doorway of Lucy's bedroom, watching Sabrina attempt to braid her daughter's hair for school. The scene should have been tender and familiar, but instead it felt awkward and stilted, like two people performing roles they'd learned from a manual rather than living them from the heart. "Hold still, Lucy," Sabrina said, her voice carrying the kind of forced patience that fooled no one. "I'm almost finished." "It's too tight," Lucy said quietly, her shoulders tense under Sabrina's careful hands. It needs to be secure so it won't fall out during the day. Noah watched Lucy's face in the mirror, the polite resignation of a child who'd learned not to ask for what she really wanted. In the months they'd been here, he'd seen this dynamic play out dozens of times. Sabrina trying desperately to get things right, Lucy accepting whatever was offered without complaint, both of them tiptoeing around each other like strangers sharing an elevator. "May I?" Noah asked softly, stepping into the room. Sabrina's hands stilled, and for a moment he saw the relief in her expression before she covered it with careful neutrality. "Of course, you're probably better at this than I am." Lucy's shoulders relaxed the moment Noah's hands replaced Sabrina's in her hair. His touch was gentle, practiced from years of managing Emma's tangles and braids and the complicated geometry of little girl hairstyles. "Better?" he asked Lucy. "Much better, thank you. Would you like me to teach you?" Noah asked Sabrina, his voice carefully neutral. "There's a technique to it that makes it more comfortable." "I'd appreciate that," Sabrina said. But Noah caught the flash of something, embarrassment, frustration, in her eyes before she looked away. This had become the pattern of their days. Noah stepping in when Sabrina struggled, offering gentle guidance, watching her learn to be the mother Lucy needed through careful observation and infinite patience. It was working, slowly but surely. Lucy was opening up, laughing more, asking for things she wanted instead of simply accepting what was offered. But Noah could see the toll it was taking on Sabrina, the weight of constantly feeling like she was failing at something that should have come naturally. "I have to leave for school in 10 minutes, Lucy said, checking the small watch on her wrist. "My presentation is today." "Your presentation?" Sabrina looked confused. "About marine biology. I told you about it last week." Lucy's voice carried just a hint of disappointment. Noah saw Sabrina's face change as she remembered, saw the self-recrimination that followed. "Of course. I'm sorry I've been distracted with work. Are you ready? Do you need anything?" "I'm ready. I prepared everything myself." The words weren't accusatory, but they landed like a small blow anyway. Lucy had learned to be self-sufficient because she'd had to be. And Noah could see that Sabrina understood this, even if she didn't know how to change it yet. "What time does it start?" Noah asked. "Maybe we could come watch." Lucy's face lit up with surprise and hope. "Really, you'd want to see it?" "Of course we would. You've been working on this for weeks. It starts at 2 o'clock. "But you don't have to." "We'll be there," Sabrina said firmly, and Noah heard the determination in her voice. "I wouldn't miss it." After Lucy left for school, Noah found Sabrina in her office, staring at her computer screen, but not really seeing it. The room was pristine and organized, like everything else in her life, but there was something hollow about the perfection that reminded Noah of a museum display. "You're beating yourself up about forgetting the presentation," he said, settling into the chair across from her desk. "How do you do it?" Sabrina asked without looking up. "How do you remember everything, every important moment, every little thing that matters to Emma?" "I don't," Noah said honestly. "I forget things all the time. Last month I completely spaced on pajama day at school. Emma had to wear regular clothes while all her friends were in their favorite pajamas. She forgave me, but I felt terrible. But you're so natural with them, both of them. You always know the right thing to say, the right way to handle whatever comes up. Sabrina, I'm not a manual for perfect parenting. I'm just a man who loves his daughter and is trying to figure it out as I go. Most of the time I have no idea what I'm doing." She finally looked at him then, and Noah saw something he hadn't expected, vulnerability mixed with a kind of desperate hope. "Lucy's therapist says she's making remarkable progress," Sabrina said quietly. "She says Lucy talks about you and Emma constantly, that she's never seen her so animated or engaged." "That's wonderful." "But she also says that Lucy still feels like she's performing for me, like she's trying to be the daughter she thinks I want, instead of just being herself." Sabrina's voice cracked slightly. "How do I fix that? How do I make her understand that I love her exactly as she is? Noah was quiet for a moment, thinking about the mornings he'd watched Sabrina with Lucy, the careful distance she maintained, even when she was trying to be close. "Can I ask you something?" he said finally. "When you decided to adopt Lucy, what did you imagine it would be like?" Sabrina's smile was sad and self-aware. "I imagined it would fill the empty spaces in my life. I imagined having someone to love who would love me back unconditionally. I thought that wanting to be a mother would be enough to make me good at it. And now I realize that I don't know how to let anyone love me, let alone a child who's already lost everyone she cared about. I'm terrified that if I let her see who I really am, she'll realize I'm not worth loving either." The honesty in her voice hit Noah like a physical blow. Here was the truth underneath all the careful manners and perfect surfaces, a woman who'd built walls so high around her heart that she couldn't figure out how to let anyone in, not even the child she desperately wanted to connect with. "Sabrina," Noah said gently, "Lucy doesn't need you to be perfect. She needs you to be real. What if real isn't enough? What if it's everything?" That afternoon they sat in the back of Lucy's classroom watching her present her project on coral reefs with the passion and intelligence that made Noah understand why Sabrina had fallen in love with this serious, brilliant little girl. Lucy's voice grew stronger as she talked about ocean conservation, her eyes lighting up as she shared facts about marine ecosystems with the enthusiasm of a true scientist. When she finished, the applause was genuine and warm, but it was the moment afterward that mattered most, when Lucy's eyes found Sabrina in the audience, and her face broke into a smile that was pure joy, unguarded and real. "She was amazing," Sabrina whispered, and Noah heard the wonder in her voice. "She was, and she did it knowing you were here, watching her. I almost missed it. I've been missing so much, but you didn't miss this one. That's what matters." As they walked to the car afterward, Lucy chattering excitedly about her teacher's praise and her classmates' questions, Noah caught the moment when Sabrina reached out and took her daughter's hand. It was a small gesture, almost hesitant, but Lucy didn't pull away. Instead, she squeezed back, and Noah saw something shift between them, a crack in the careful walls they'd both built. That evening, Noah found himself on the terrace outside his cottage, watching the lights come on in the main house. Emma was inside doing homework, the comfortable sounds of her presence drifting through the open window. He thought about Sabrina's question, "How do you remember everything?" and realized the answer wasn't about memory at all. It was about presence, about showing up not because you had all the answers, but because love meant being there for the questions, about understanding that children didn't need perfect parents. They needed parents who were willing to be imperfect together, to stumble and learn and try again. His phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "How's life in paradise?" Noah looked at the house where Sabrina was probably helping Lucy with her bedtime routine, probably overthinking every word and gesture, probably loving that little girl with a fierce intensity that scared her because she'd never learned to trust. "That love could last? Complicated," he texted back, "but good complicated. Be careful, brother. Don't lose yourself in their story." But as Noah headed inside to check on Emma's homework and tuck her into bed with the familiar ritual of stories and kisses and promises to be there in the morning, he wondered if maybe he wasn't losing himself at all. Maybe he was finding parts of himself he'd forgotten existed, parts that Sarah would have recognized, would have smiled at, parts that knew how to hope again. The family photograph sat in Noah's bedside drawer like a talisman from another life. Sarah's smile, radiant and eternal, frozen in time beside his younger self and baby Emma. Some nights he could go to sleep without looking at it. Other nights, like tonight, he found himself holding it under the lamplight, studying Sarah's face as if he might find answers there for questions he wasn't sure he should be asking. 3 weeks had passed since Lucy's presentation, and something fundamental had shifted in the house. Sabrina was trying harder, but more importantly, she was trying differently. Instead of perfect braids that pulled too tight, she was learning to accept Lucy's preference for ponytails. Instead of scheduling every moment of their time together, she was learning to follow Lucy's lead when the little girl wanted to show her something in the garden or share an interesting fact from her latest book. The changes were subtle but profound, and Noah found himself watching Sabrina with an attention that had nothing to do with his job and everything to do with the woman he was beginning to see beneath the careful control. "Daddy!" Emma's voice pulled him from his thoughts. She stood in his doorway in her purple pajamas, Mr. Elephant tucked under one arm. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" "I had a bad dream about Mama." Emma climbed onto his bed without waiting for permission, and curling up next to him with the automatic trust of a child who'd never doubted her place in his world. "Do you want to tell me about it?" Emma was quiet for a moment, her small hand finding the photograph in his. "In the dream, Mama came back, but she was angry because we live here now instead of in our old apartment. She said we forgot about her." Noah's throat tightened. He'd been so focused on helping Sabrina and Lucy that he hadn't considered how their new life might be affecting Emma's relationship with her mother's memory. "Oh, sweetheart, Mama would never be angry about that. She loved you more than anything in the world, and she wanted you to be happy and safe. But what if she thinks I love Sabrina and Lucy more than I love her?" The question hit Noah like a physical blow, because it forced him to confront something he'd been trying not to acknowledge. Emma wasn't the only one forming new attachments. The comfortable rhythms of their life here, the way Sabrina's eyes lit up when she talked about something Lucy had said, the quiet moments when the four of them felt like something that might become a family, all of it was creating bonds that felt dangerously real. Emma, loving new people doesn't mean you love Mama any less. Love isn't like pizza, where if you give someone a slice, there's less for everyone else. Love grows bigger when you share it. Is that why you look sad sometimes when you're watching Sabrina with Lucy? Children, Noah reflected, saw entirely too much. Sometimes when I see Sabrina learning to be a better mom to Lucy, it makes me think about Mama and how good she was at taking care of you. It makes me miss her. Do you think Mama would like Sabrina? Noah considered the question seriously. Sarah had been generous with her heart, quick to see the best in people, fiercely protective of anyone who needed help. "I think Mama would like anyone who makes you happy and helps you feel safe. Sabrina makes me happy, and Lucy is like the sister I always wanted." Emma snuggled closer to him. "Is it okay to be happy here even though we're sad about Mama?" "Yes, sweetheart. I think being happy is exactly what Mama would want for us." But as Emma drifted back to sleep in his arms, Noah wasn't sure he believed his own words. The guilt he felt about moving forward, about the way his heart lifted when Sabrina smiled, or the protective instinct he felt toward Lucy, sat in his chest like a stone. Sarah had been his whole world for 8 years. How could he even begin to imagine loving someone else? The next morning brought the kind of crisis that tested everyone's carefully built progress. Noah was in the kitchen making breakfast when his phone rang with a call from Lucy's school. "Mr. Callahan, this is Mrs. Peterson, Lucy's teacher. I'm calling because Lucy is having what appears to be a panic attack, and she's asking for you. Could you come to the school?" "I'll be right there. Have you called Sabrina?" "We tried, but it went straight to voicemail. Lucy specifically asked for you." Noah found Lucy in the school nurse's office, sitting in a chair that made her look impossibly small, her face blotchy from crying and her breathing still uneven. The moment she saw him, she launched herself into his arms with the desperation of a child who'd been holding herself together by sheer force of will. "Hey, little scientist," Noah said softly, holding her close and feeling her shaking gradually subside. "Talk to me. What happened?" "We were supposed to write about our family for Mother's Day," Lucy said into his shoulder, "and I didn't know what to write because I don't remember my real parents very much anymore. And Sabrina tries so hard, but she's not really my mom. And you and Emma aren't really my family either, even though it feels like you are." Noah's heart broke for this little girl, who was trying to navigate loyalties and love and loss that would challenge adults. He pulled back to look at her face, brushing away tears with gentle fingers. "Lucy, family isn't just about who shares your DNA or whose name is on legal papers. Family is about who shows up for you, who takes care of you when you're scared, who celebrates with you when you're happy." But the assignment said to write about our mothers. Then write about all of them. Write about the mother who gave birth to you and loved you first. Write about Sabrina, who's learning how to love you the way you need to be loved. Write about how families can be complicated and beautiful at the same time. What about Emma? She's like my sister now. She is your sister in all the ways that matter. Blood doesn't make family, Lucy. Love does. Lucy was quiet for a moment, thinking with the seriousness that made her seem older than her 7 years. "Noah, are you and Emma my family?" The question hung in the air between them, loaded with implications that scared Noah more than he wanted to admit, because the honest answer was yes. Somewhere in the past few months, without planning or permission, they had become a family. Complicated, unconventional, held together by choice rather than obligation, but real nonetheless. "Yes," he said simply, "we are." When Sabrina finally arrived at the school, her face pale with worry and guilt, she found Noah and Lucy in the courtyard, sharing a bag of goldfish crackers and talking quietly about the different ways people could belong to each other. "I'm so sorry," Sabrina said, sitting down beside them on the bench. "I was in meetings all morning. My phone was on silent." "It's okay," Lucy said, leaning against Noah's side, but reaching for Sabrina's hand. Noah explained about families. What did he explain? That I can love my first parents and you and Noah and Emma all at the same time. That love doesn't run out. Sabrina's eyes filled with tears, and Noah saw her struggle with the same guilt he'd been fighting, the fear that loving someone new meant betraying someone old. "That's absolutely right," Sabrina said, her voice thick with emotion. "Love just grows bigger." That evening, after Lucy had finished her Mother's Day essay, and Emma had helped her illustrate it with drawings of all the people who made up their unconventional family, Noah found Sabrina on the terrace overlooking the garden. She sat in one of the wicker chairs, a glass of wine untouched beside her, staring out at the approaching sunset. "Mind if I join you?" he asked. "Please." She gestured to the chair beside her. "Thank you for today, for being there when Lucy needed someone. You don't have to thank me for that, don't I? This whole arrangement was supposed to be about me learning from you. Instead, you're cleaning up my mistakes. Sabrina, you weren't making a mistake by working. You were doing your job. Life happens, and we handle it together. That's what families do. Is that what we are?" "A family?" The question echoed Lucy's from earlier, and Noah felt the same flutter of hope and terror in his chest. "I think we're becoming one. I've never been part of a real family before," Sabrina said quietly. "My parents were absent even when they were present. I grew up thinking that love was something you earned by being perfect, by never needing anything. And now I'm learning that love is something you build together, one imperfect day at a time." She turned to look at him, and Noah saw something in her eyes that made his breath catch. "I'm also learning that I'm falling in love with you, and I don't know what to do about that." The words hung between them like a bridge. Neither of them was sure they should cross. Noah thought about Sarah's photograph in his drawer, about Emma's, questions about the way his heart had been quietly reorganizing itself around this woman and her daughter without his permission. "Sabrina, I know it's complicated. I know you loved your wife, and I'm not trying to replace her or compete with her memory. I just needed you to know that what's happening between us isn't just gratitude or convenience. It's real." Noah reached for her hand, surprised by how natural the gesture felt. "It is real, and that terrifies me. Because of Sarah, because of everything. Because I don't know how to love someone new without feeling like I'm betraying someone old." Because Emma and Lucy are depending on us to get this right. Because if this doesn't work, it won't just be my heart that breaks. Sabrina's fingers tightened around his. So what do? We take it one day at a time. We be honest with each other and with the girls. We remember that love isn't a limited resource. And if we mess it up, then we figure it out together. That's what families do. As the sun set over the gardens and the lights came on in the house where their daughters were probably getting ready for bed, Noah felt something shift inside his chest. Not the erasure of his love for Sarah, but the expansion of his capacity to love. Sarah would have understood, he realized. She would have wanted him to be happy, would have wanted Emma to have siblings and a mother figure and a life full of the kind of love that grew rather than diminished. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new questions about how to blend their complicated past with their uncertain future. But tonight, sitting beside this woman who was learning to love bravely despite her fears, Noah allowed himself to hope that some risks were worth taking, that some families were worth fighting for, no matter how they came to be. Noah discovered the truth by accident, which seemed fitting for something that would change everything he thought he understood about their carefully constructed life. He'd been looking for Lucy's inhaler in Sabrina's office. She'd had a mild asthma flare-up during their morning walk, when he knocked over a stack of papers on her desk. As he gathered them up, a letterhead caught his eye. Neurological Associates of Manhattan. He shouldn't have read it. Privacy was sacred, and Sabrina had trusted him with access to her home, her office, her daughter's care. But the words, early onset, Alzheimer's disease, jumped off the page like a slap, and suddenly Noah was sitting in Sabrina's desk chair, his hands shaking as he read through medical reports that recontextualized everything he thought he knew about why he was here. Patient. Presence with family history of early onset Alzheimer's. Genetic testing confirms SEN1 mutation. Symptoms typically manifest between ages 30-40. Progression is faster than traditional Alzheimer's. Life expectancy 8 to 15 years from onset. The papers scattered to the floor as Noah's hands went numb. Sabrina was 36 years old. According to the dates on the reports, she'd received this diagnosis 8 months ago, 2 months before she'd adopted Lucy, 4 months before she'd hired him. Everything clicked into place with horrible clarity. The urgency with which she'd pursued the adoption. The desperate need to learn how to connect with Lucy, the way she sometimes seemed to be memorizing moments, storing them up like treasures, the job offer that had seemed too generous, too trusting. It wasn't generosity. It was preparation. She was training him to take care of Lucy when she couldn't anymore. Noah. Sabrina's voice from the doorway made him jump. She took in the scene. The scattered papers, his pale face, the way he was looking at her like she was already disappearing, and her shoulders sagged with resignation. "You weren't supposed to find out like this," she said quietly. "Were you ever going to tell me?" Noah's voice sounded strange to his own ears, hollow and distant. "I was waiting for the right time, for you to settle in, for Lucy to bond with you, and Emma, for everything to feel stable before I introduced another variable." "Another variable?" Noah stood up too quickly, the chair rolling backward. "Sabrina, you're dying. We're all dying, Noah. I just have a more specific timeline." The casual way she said it, the matter-of-fact tone that suggested she'd had this conversation with herself so many times it no longer carried emotional weight, made Noah's anger flare. "Don't do that. Don't minimize this. Do you have any idea what you've done? Emma and Lucy are getting attached to each other, to this life. He stopped himself before he could say falling in love with you, but the words hung in the air anyway. "You're what?" Sabrina's voice was soft, but there was steel underneath it. "I'm supposed to just watch you disappear. I'm supposed to help Lucy get attached to you, learn to trust you, and then what? Hold her while she loses another mother?" "The plan was never for you to watch me disappear," Sabrina said, closing the office door behind her. The plan was for you to be here when I do, to help Lucy understand that families don't end just because someone leaves, to show her that love persists even when the person you love can't stay. Noah sank back into the chair, the weight of betrayal and understanding warring in his chest. You hired me to be Lucy's father when you're gone. I hired you to be Lucy's family. Period. Whether I'm here for 2 years or 10 years, or if some miracle happens and the research finds a treatment. Sabrina moved to the window, looking out at the garden where they could see Emma and Lucy playing on the swing set. I watched you save my life, Noah. But more than that, I watched how you talked to me afterward. You were calm, present, focused on what needed to happen next instead of panicking about what might happen. That's exactly what Lucy is going to need. You should have told me. Would you have taken the job if you'd known? The question hung between them, and Noah realized he didn't know the answer. Would he have been brave enough to sign up for guaranteed heartbreak? Would he have been willing to bring Emma into a situation where she would inevitably lose someone she cared about? I don't know, he said honestly. I couldn't risk it. Lucy needed you too much. Sabrina turned back to face him, and for the first time since he'd known her, she looked fragile. I know it's not fair to you or Emma. I know I'm asking you to love someone you're going to lose, but Lucy has already lost everyone. I can't let her go through this alone. What about symptoms? How long do you have before I start forgetting things? Before I can't take care of myself? Sabrina's smile was sad but steady. Could be 2 years, could be 5. The doctors don't know exactly. Early onset is unpredictable. Noah thought about all the moments that suddenly made sense. The way Sabrina sometimes repeated questions, the elaborate notes she kept about Lucy's preferences and routines, the urgency with which she approached every interaction with her daughter. Is that why you write everything down? Why you have those detailed schedules for Lucy's care? I'm creating a manual for whoever takes care of her when I can't. Medical information, comfort preferences, the names of her favorite books, what helps when she has nightmares. Sabrina's voice cracked slightly. I'm trying to document everything a mother should know so that whoever loves her next will have a roadmap. The generosity of it, the heartbreaking thoughtfulness of a woman preparing to lose her own mind while ensuring her daughter would be cared for, made Noah's throat tight. Sabrina, I know it's selfish. I know I should have told you from the beginning. But I was so desperate to give Lucy what she needed, and you were so good with her. And for the first time since the diagnosis, I felt like maybe I could actually pull this off. Tears were sliding down her cheeks now, the careful control finally cracking. I'm so scared, Noah. I'm terrified of forgetting her, of becoming someone she has to take care of instead of someone who takes care of her. I'm terrified of dying before she's old enough to understand why I had to leave. Noah crossed the room without thinking, pulling Sabrina into his arms as she finally let herself fall apart. She felt small and breakable against his chest. This woman who'd seemed so untouchable when he'd first met her. You're not leaving her, he said into her hair. Not really. Everything you're teaching her, every moment you're building with her, that becomes part of who she is. That doesn't disappear just because you do. But what if it's not enough? What if she forgets me the way I'm going to forget her? Then we'll remind her. Emma and I will tell her stories about you. We'll show her pictures and videos. We'll make sure she knows how much you loved her, how hard you fought to give her everything she needed. Sabrina pulled back to look at him, her eyes red but hopeful. We? Did you really think I was going to walk away from this? From Lucy? From you? Noah cupped her face in his hands, thumbs brushing away tears. I'm terrified, Sabrina. This is the scariest thing I've ever signed up for, but I'm not going anywhere. Even knowing what's coming? Especially knowing what's coming. Lucy's going to need people who love her when this gets hard, and you're going to need people who love you too. They stood there in the quiet of the office, holding each other while outside their daughters played. In the sunshine, oblivious to the shadow that had just been acknowledged between their parents. Noah thought about Emma's questions the night before, about love being like pizza, about whether there was enough to go around. He was about to find out exactly how much love he was capable of giving and whether it would be enough to carry them all through what was coming. "What do we tell the girls?" he asked. "Not yet," Sabrina said quickly. "Lucy's just starting to feel secure. Emma's just beginning to see this as home. Can we wait until they're stronger? Until this feels more like family and less like an arrangement? How long do we have before you start showing symptoms?" "I don't know. Maybe I already am, and I just don't recognize them yet. That's the cruelest part. You lose pieces of yourself so gradually that you don't realize they're gone until someone else points it out." Noah thought about the responsibility she was asking him to carry, watching for the signs that the woman he was learning to love was disappearing, helping Lucy understand why her mother was becoming a stranger, holding their family together as it slowly fell apart. "Okay," he said, "we wait. But Sabrina, no more secrets. If something changes, if you notice anything, you tell me immediately. I can't help you if I don't know what's happening. I promise." As they walked back to the house together, the legal documents Noah had seen tucked between the medical reports made perfect sense. Sabrina was already in the process of making him Lucy's legal guardian. She was preparing for every contingency, planning for a future where she couldn't protect her daughter anymore. That evening, Noah watched Sabrina help Lucy with her homework, noting the way she lingered over each interaction as if memorizing it. He watched Emma teach Lucy a new card game, their laughter filling the house with the sound of siblings who didn't know yet how precious their time together might be. And he made a choice that felt both brave and terrifying. He was going to love them all as hard as he could for as long as he could, and trust that somehow that would be enough to carry them through whatever came next. Some families were built by choice rather than chance. Some love stories were about holding on rather than letting go. And sometimes the most important thing you could do was show up for the hard parts, even when, especially when, you could see them coming from miles away. The bracelet was made of purple and green string, woven together with the careful imprecision of small fingers, working hard to create something beautiful. Emma had been working on it for 3 days, her tongue poking out in concentration as she followed the pattern Lucy had taught her. Now she held it out to her chosen sister with the solemnity of someone bestowing a great honor. "It's for you," Emma said, placing it in Lucy's palm. "So you remember that we're family even when we're not together." Lucy's eyes filled with tears as she tied the bracelet around her wrist, and Noah felt his chest tighten with the weight of everything the girls didn't know they were preparing for. It had been 2 weeks since he'd discovered Sabrina's diagnosis, 2 weeks of watching her catalogue moments with Lucy while pretending everything was normal, 2 weeks of his own heart breaking a little more each day as he fell deeper in love with a woman he was going to lose. "I love it," Lucy whispered, hugging Emma with the fierce affection that had grown between them over the past months. "I'll never take it off." Noah was about to tell them it was time to get ready for Lucy's therapy appointment when his phone rang. Sabrina's business partner, David Chen, had been calling more frequently lately, and Noah had noticed the tension in Sabrina's voice whenever she spoke with him. "David, I told you I'd handle the Meridian contract by Friday." Sabrina's voice from the kitchen stopped abruptly, and Noah heard the sharp intake of breath that had become familiar. "And what do you mean, petition for conservatorship?" Noah's blood went cold. He gestured for the girls to keep playing and moved toward the kitchen, arriving in time to see Sabrina sink into a chair at the breakfast table, her face pale with shock. "You can't do this," she was saying. "I'm not incompetent. I'm managing everything perfectly well." But Noah could hear David's voice through the phone, calm and implacable, explaining something about fiduciary responsibility and shareholder protection, and the need for independent evaluation of her mental state. "I see," Sabrina said finally, her voice flat. "And I suppose you've already filed the paperwork." When she hung up, her hands were shaking. "What happened?" Noah asked, sitting down beside her. David's filed a petition to have me declared mentally incompetent. He wants the court to grant him conservatorship of my assets and decision-making authority for the company. Sabrina's voice was eerily calm, but Noah could see the panic in her eyes. If he succeeds, I lose control of everything, including decisions. About Lucy's care. On what grounds? He says I've been making erratic business decisions, that my judgment is compromised, that the recent personnel changes, meaning you, indicate instability. Sabrina laughed, but there was no humor in it. He's not wrong about the business decisions. I have been distracted, prioritizing time with Lucy over quarterly reports. But erratic, I've never been more focused in my life. Noah felt pieces clicking. Together, David's suspicious questions about Noah's qualifications, the way he'd looked at Sabrina during their last few business meetings, the subtle challenges to her authority that Noah had witnessed. He knows about the diagnosis, doesn't he? I think he suspects. He's been watching me, noting every time I write something down instead of remembering it, every meeting I've delegated to focus on Lucy. Sabrina's hands clenched into fists. The irony is that everything I've been doing, securing Lucy's future, putting support systems in place, making sure you're legally positioned to care for her, all of it looks like evidence of declining capacity to someone who doesn't understand what I'm preparing for. What does this mean for Lucy? If David succeeds, if I'm declared incompetent, then all my decisions become suspect. The adoption, your guardianship paperwork, the trust fund I set up for Lucy's future, all of it could be challenged. Lucy could end up in the foster system while the courts sort everything out. The thought of Lucy, serious, brilliant Lucy, who was just learning to trust that this family was permanent, being ripped away from everything she'd come to depend on, made Noah's vision blur with rage. "We fight it," he said. "With what?" "Noah, David has documentation of every business decision I've made in the past 6 months. He has emails where I've asked you for advice about things I used to handle myself. He has security footage of me having panic attacks in my office." Sabrina's voice cracked. "How do I prove I'm competent to make decisions about my own life when I'm terrified that he might be right? Because competence isn't about being perfect. It's about making rational decisions based on available information. And everything you've done, adopting Lucy, hiring me, planning for the future, has been completely rational given what you're facing. But how do we prove that in court without revealing the diagnosis? The moment Alzheimer's enters the conversation, I lose. Early onset, genetic, progressive. It's exactly what David needs to justify everything he's doing." Noah was quiet for a moment, thinking about the legal battle ahead, about the impossible position Sabrina was in. Then he remembered something David had said during their last conversation, a comment about the inappropriate emotional attachment Sabrina had developed to her employees. "He doesn't just want control of the company," Noah said slowly. "He wants you out of Lucy's life entirely." "What do you mean?" Think about it. A woman with early onset Alzheimer's adopts a child and then hires an unqualified man to help care for her. From the outside, it looks like exactly the kind of poor judgment that proves incompetence. But if he can frame it as, you developing inappropriate feelings for an employee who's taking advantage of your condition, Sabrina's face went white. He could argue that you're manipulating me, that the adoption was influenced by your presence, that I'm not thinking clearly because I'm emotionally involved with someone who has a financial incentive to keep me dependent. Which means we have to prove the opposite. We have to show that every decision you've made has been in Lucy's best interest, not mine. We have to demonstrate that you're thinking more clearly now than you were before I arrived. How do we do that? Noah looked toward the living room, where Emma and Lucy were building an elaborate fort out of couch cushions and blankets, their laughter echoing through the house. He thought about the transformation he'd witnessed in both of them, Lucy's growing confidence and joy, Emma's expanding capacity for love and patience. Then he thought about Sabrina herself, the way she'd learned to be present with Lucy, to prioritize connection over perfection. "We let Lucy speak for herself," he said. "We show the court what this family has done for her. We bring in her therapist, her teachers, anyone who's seen how she's flourished since you adopted her. We make the case that your decisions have been not just competent but inspired. And if that's not enough, then we tell the truth, all of it. We explain why you adopted Lucy, why you hired me, what you're preparing for. We make the argument that planning for your own incapacity is the most competent thing you could possibly do." Sabrina was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands. When she looked up, her expression was determined but fragile. "Noah, if this goes badly, if the court decides I'm not fit to make decisions about Lucy, I need you to promise me something. Anything. Don't let them separate the girls. Whatever happens to me, don't let them break up what Emma and Lucy have found in each other. They've both lost so much already." "I promise," Noah said, taking her hands in his. "But it's not going to come to that. We're going to fight this, and we're going to win because we're fighting for the right reasons." That evening, after the girls were in bed, Noah found himself in his cottage kitchen with Emma's handmade bracelet pattern spread out on the table. She'd been teaching Lucy the complicated knots, but she'd also been working on something else, a larger version with 4 strands instead of 2, purple and green and blue and yellow woven together. "It's for all of us," she'd explained earlier, "so we remember we're connected even when things get scary." Noah traced the pattern with his finger, marveling at his daughter's intuitive understanding of what they were all going to need in the coming weeks. He thought about the legal battle ahead, about the testimony he'd have to give, about the scrutiny their unconventional family would face. But mostly he thought about the 4 strands of Emma's bracelet and how much stronger they were when woven together than any of them could be alone. His phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Haven't heard from you in a while. Everything okay?" Noah looked toward the main house where Sabrina was probably reviewing legal documents and preparing for a fight that would determine Lucy's entire future. He thought about the conversation he'd need to have with Emma soon, about the possibility that their life here might not be as permanent as she'd believed. "Getting complicated," he texted back, "but we're handling it. Need backup?" Noah smiled despite everything. Marcus had always been ready to charge into battle for the people he loved. No questions asked. "Maybe. I'll let you know. Whatever you need, brother. You know where to find me." As Noah prepared for bed, he caught sight of Sarah's photograph on his nightstand. For months, he'd been afraid that loving Sabrina meant betraying Sarah's memory. Now he understood that the opposite was true. Everything. Sarah had taught him about love, about showing up for the people who needed you, about fighting for what mattered most, was exactly what this moment required. Tomorrow they would begin preparing for a legal battle that would test everything they'd built together. Tomorrow, they would start the process of proving that love could create families just as real and valid as any traditional arrangement. Tonight, he would hold on to the image of Emma and Lucy weaving bracelets together, binding themselves to each other with purple and green string, and the unshakable faith that some connections were strong enough to survive anything. The courthouse felt like a cathedral built for judgment rather than worship, all marble columns and echoing footsteps and the weight of decisions that would reshape lives. Noah sat in the gallery behind Sabrina, watching her shoulders set with the kind of determination he'd learned to recognize, the posture of a woman who'd faced down boardrooms full of men who underestimated her and wasn't about to back down now. Lucy sat between Emma and Mrs. Chen, wearing her best dress and the purple-green bracelet Emma had made her. She'd asked that morning why they had to go to court, and Sabrina had explained it simply. Sometimes adults disagree about what's best for children, and we need a judge to help us figure it out. "But you know what's best for me," Lucy had said, with the absolute certainty of a 7-year-old who'd found her place in the world. "Yes, sweetheart, I do." Now, as David Chen's lawyer painted a picture of Sabrina as an unstable woman making irrational decisions under the influence of an opportunistic employee, Noah felt the familiar surge of protective anger. But underneath it was something else, a quiet confidence that came from knowing the truth of what they'd built together. Ms. Langford's recent behavior patterns clearly indicate compromised judgment, the lawyer was saying, consulting his notes. With theatrical precision, the impulsive adoption of a child she was unprepared to parent, the hiring of an unqualified individual for a position that doesn't exist in any legitimate business structure, the delegation of important business decisions to said individual. These are not the actions of someone capable of managing a multi-million-dollar corporation. Judge Martinez, a woman in her 50s with keen eyes and graying hair, listened without expression. She'd been chosen specifically for her experience with family court and elder law, and Noah hoped that meant she'd understand the complexities of what they were facing. Furthermore, the lawyer continued, we have evidence that Ms. Langford's relationship with Mr. Callahan has moved beyond the professional realm, creating a clear conflict of interest and calling into question the validity of all financial and legal arrangements made in his favor. Noah felt heat creep up his neck. The private investigator's photos were spread across the evidence table, images of him and Sabrina at Lucy's school events, walking together in the garden, the moment on. The terrace, when she'd confessed her feelings. Innocent moments transformed into something sordid by the lens of suspicion. When it was time for Sabrina's lawyer to present their case, Noah held his breath. Margaret Rivera was a family law specialist who'd built her career defending unconventional families, and she moved through the courtroom with the confidence of someone who'd fought these battles before. Your Honor, she began, what we have here is not a case of diminished capacity, but rather a case of expanded capacity. Ms. Langford has made every decision in question with careful consideration of her daughter's needs and her own responsibilities as a parent and business owner. She gestured to a timeline projected on the courtroom screen, Lucy's therapy reports, school evaluations, medical checkups, all showing dramatic improvement since the adoption. Lucy Langford was a traumatized child when she entered Ms. Langford's care 8 months ago. She was withdrawn, struggling academically, and resistant to forming attachments. Under Ms. Langford's care, with Mr. Callahan's support, she has flourished. Her therapist reports that she's never seen such rapid positive development in a child who'd experienced such significant loss. Noah watched the judge's face as Margaret presented Lucy's artwork, writing samples, report cards, all evidence of a child who was thriving under Sabrina's care. Mr. Chen's characterization of Mr. Callahan as unqualified ignores the fact that he has successfully raised his own daughter while managing multiple responsibilities. His qualifications aren't academic, they're experiential, and they're exactly what Lucy needed. When Margaret called Noah to the witness stand, his legs felt unsteady. The courtroom was packed. Reporters who'd gotten wind of the story, Sabrina's employees, even Marcus, who'd driven down from Queens despite Noah's protests that he didn't need to be there. Mr. Callahan, Margaret began, please tell the court about your first meeting with Lucy. Noah thought about that day, about the serious little girl in the white dress who'd shaken Emma's hand instead of accepting a hug. She was polite, well-behaved, everything you'd expect from a child who'd learned that being perfect was the safest way to navigate the world. But she wasn't happy. She was performing happiness. And how did that change over time? Slowly, she started sitting on the floor during puzzle time. She asked Emma to see her treehouse. She began expressing preferences instead of just accepting whatever was offered. Noah's voice grew stronger as he spoke. She learned that she could be herself and still be loved. What role did you play in that transformation? I showed Sabrina how to meet Lucy where she was instead of where she thought Lucy should be. How to be present instead of perfect. How to listen for what Lucy needed instead of assuming what she wanted. David Chen's lawyer rose for cross-examination with the predatory smile of someone who thought he held all the cards. "Mr. Callahan, isn't it true that you were facing significant financial difficulties when Ms. Langford hired you?" "Yes." "Medical debt from your late wife's illness?" "Yes." "And Ms. Langford offered you a salary far exceeding anything you'd earned in your previous employment?" "She offered me fair compensation for important work." "Important work that somehow includes access to her personal finances, her business decisions, and her intimate family matters?" Noah felt the trap closing, but forced himself to stay calm. "Ms. Langford asked for my advice about parenting decisions that affected her business schedule. She consulted me about Lucy's needs when making financial plans for her daughter's future. That's what parents do. They consider their children in every important decision." "And the romantic relationship that developed between you?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Noah glanced at Sabrina, saw her nod almost imperceptibly. "I care about Sabrina deeply. I care about Lucy deeply. That's not a conflict of interest. It's exactly what makes me qualified to help them." "Qualified to help them, or motivated to ensure your own financial security?" "Your Honor," Margaret objected, but Noah was already answering. "If I was motivated by financial security, I would have run the moment I learned about Sabrina's diagnosis." The Tao words slipped out before Noah could stop them, and he felt the entire courtroom shift. David Chen's lawyer looked confused. Judge Martinez leaned forward with sudden interest, and Sabrina closed her eyes as if steeling herself for what came next. "What diagnosis, Mr. Callahan?" the judge asked. Noah looked at Sabrina, saw her nod. Again, a small decisive movement that said, "It's time. Early onset Alzheimer's disease, Your Honor, genetic form." "Sabrina hired me not because she was thinking irrationally, but because she was thinking more clearly about the future than anyone in that courtroom." The explosion of whispers from the gallery was cut short by Judge Martinez's gavel, but Noah could see David Chen's face go pale as his entire case crumbled. Everything that had looked like poor judgment suddenly looked like heartbreaking wisdom. Ms. Langford adopted Lucy, knowing she would need someone to help care for her when her condition progresses. Noah continued, "She hired me to learn how to be the best mother she could be for whatever time she has left, and to ensure Lucy would have someone who understands her needs when that time runs out. Every decision she's made has been about protecting her daughter, not about personal gain or romantic impulses." Margaret was on her feet immediately. "Your Honor, we'd like to request a brief recess to submit additional medical documentation that supports Mr. Callahan's testimony." As the judge called for a 30-minute break, Noah stepped down from the witness stand, feeling like he'd just jumped off a cliff. Sabrina met him at the gate between the gallery and the courtroom, her eyes bright with tears. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I know you wanted to keep that private." "No," she said, taking his hands in hers. "You did exactly the right thing. The truth was always going to come out. Better that it comes from us." Behind them, Lucy tugged. On Emma's sleeve, "What's Alzheimer's?" she asked in the loud whisper of a child who hasn't learned that some questions shouldn't be asked in courtrooms full of strangers. Emma, with the wisdom of someone who'd learned early that life was fragile and love was precious, put her arm around her chosen sister. "It means we have to love each other extra hard while we can," she said simply. Judge Martinez returned to the bench with the expression of someone who'd just had her assumptions completely overturned. The rest of the hearing would determine not just the legal status of their family, but whether love was enough to overcome the complicated mathematics of loss and hope and the courage required to choose each other anyway. When Judge Martinez returned to the bench, the entire atmosphere of the courtroom had shifted. What had begun as a corporate power struggle had transformed into something much more fundamental, a question about what families look like and who had the right to define them. "Given the new information presented," Judge Martinez said, her voice careful and measured, "I'd like to hear directly from the medical professionals involved in Ms. Langford's care and from those who have observed Lucy's Development. Dr. Sarah Gim, the neurologist who diagnosed Sabrina, took the stand with the quiet authority of someone who delivered impossible news to too many families. Ms. Langford received her diagnosis 8 months ago, Dr. Kim testified. Her response was immediate and methodical. She researched every aspect of the disease, explored all treatment options, and began making practical arrangements for her future care needs. In my experience, this level of proactive planning is the hallmark of someone whose cognitive abilities are entirely intact. In your professional opinion, was Ms. Langford competent to make major life decisions at the time of the adoption? Absolutely. Early onset Alzheimer's typically doesn't affect judgment and decision-making capacity until much later in the progression. Ms. Langford's decisions, adopting a child who needed stability, hiring someone to help provide that stability, were not only competent but remarkably thoughtful. Lucy's therapist, Dr. Rachel Moore, painted an even clearer picture of what Sabrina's choices had accomplished. When Lucy first came to see me, she exhibited classic signs of attachment disorder. Dr. Moore explained. She was hypervigilant, emotionally withdrawn, and terrified of expressing needs or preferences. The transformation I've witnessed over the past 8 months is nothing short of remarkable. What do you attribute that transformation to? To consistency, patience, and most importantly, to having adults in her life who prioritize her emotional needs over their own convenience. Ms. Langford learned to meet Lucy where she was, to follow Lucy's cues about affection and boundaries. Mr. Callahan provided a male role model who showed Lucy that men could be safe, nurturing presences. Together, they've created an environment where Lucy feels secure enough to be herself. And in your professional opinion, would removing Lucy from this environment be detrimental to her well-being? Catastrophic, Dr. Moore said without hesitation. Lucy has learned to trust that this family is permanent. Breaking that trust would likely undo years of therapeutic progress. David Chen took the stand in his own defense, but his testimony felt hollow after the medical evidence. He spoke about fiduciary responsibility and shareholder value, about the need for clear-headed leadership in a competitive market. But when Margaret cross-examined him, the real motivations became clear. Mr. Chen, isn't it true that you've been positioning yourself to take over Ms. Langford's company for the past year? I've been preparing for various contingencies, including the contingency that Ms. Langford might want to spend more time with her family and less time in boardrooms. Business requires full commitment. Personal distractions can compromise personal distractions like caring for a traumatized child, like building a stable family environment. David's face flushed. Like making decisions based on emotion rather than logic. And in your view, love is illogical? In my view, Ms. Langford's judgment has been compromised by her attachment to people who have financial motivations to maintain their positions in her life. Margaret turned to the judge. Your Honor, I'd like to present Exhibit F, the financial arrangements Ms. Langford made for Mr. Callahan's employment. The document she distributed showed not the generous salary David had implied, but a carefully structured arrangement that included education benefits for Emma, therapy coverage for Lucy, and a trust fund that would support both children's futures, with the specific provision that the money could never be accessed directly by Noah. Ms. Langford structured Mr. Callahan's compensation to ensure that he could never benefit financially from her incapacity, Margaret explained. If anything, her condition progressing would reduce his access to resources, not increase it. This is not the arrangement of someone being manipulated. It's the arrangement of someone protecting everyone involved. The most powerful testimony came last, when Judge Martinez asked to speak with Lucy privately in her chambers. Noah watched through the glass partition as the 7-year-old sat in the big leather chair, her legs swinging as she answered the judge's questions with the serious attention she gave to all adult conversations. When they returned, Lucy walked directly to Sabrina and climbed into her lap, a gesture of trust and affection that spoke louder than any legal argument. "Lucy has some things she'd like to say," Judge Martinez announced. Lucy looked around the courtroom with the grave expression of someone who understood that important things were being decided. "I know Sabrina is sick," she said, her clear voice carrying to every corner of the room. "I know she might forget things, but she's my mom, and Noah and Emma are my family. When my first parents died, I thought I'd never have a family again. But families aren't just about blood. They're about who takes care of you and who you take care of back." She twisted the bracelet on her wrist, the purple and green strands catching the courtroom lights. "Emma made this for me so I'd remember. We're connected even when things get scary. But I don't need a bracelet to remember. I remember because every day they show me I belong somewhere." Lucy looked directly at David Chen. "You want to take me away because you think Sabrina can't take care of me anymore. But you don't understand. I'm learning to take care of her too. That's what families do." The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of someone in the gallery crying. A reporter, Noah realized, who'd come expecting a corporate scandal and found something much more human. Judge Martinez called for a final recess to review all the evidence and testimonies. As they waited in the hallway, Lucy sat between Emma and Sabrina, the three of them forming a small circle of connection in the chaos of the courthouse. "Whatever happens," Sabrina said quietly, "I want you both to know that these months have been the happiest of my life. You taught me what it means to be a mother, what it means to be part of something bigger than myself." "Nothing's going to happen," Emma said with the fierce certainty of a 6-year-old who'd already lost one parent and wasn't about to lose anyone else. "The judge can see that we belong together." When they were called back into the courtroom, Judge Martinez had arranged the papers on her bench with the precision of someone who'd made a difficult decision. "This case has required me to consider not just legal precedents, but fundamental questions about the nature of family and the best interests of a child," she began. "The evidence presented shows that Ms. Langford's decisions, far from being impaired, demonstrate remarkable foresight and selflessness." Noah felt Sabrina's hand find his, her fingers trembling slightly. "Mr. Chen's petition for conservatorship is denied. Ms. Langford retains full legal capacity and decision-making authority. Furthermore, I am approving the guardianship arrangements she has put in place for Lucy's care." The gavel came down with the weight of finality, and Noah felt something in his chest unclench that had been tight for weeks. Around them, the courtroom erupted in whispers and movement, but Noah's attention was focused entirely on the small circle of his family, Sabrina crying with relief, Lucy hugging Emma with fierce joy, the two girls who'd found each other in the midst of loss and held on tight enough to survive anything. Outside the courthouse, with cameras flashing and reporters shouting questions they didn't answer, Noah lifted Emma onto his shoulders while Sabrina held Lucy's hand. They walked toward the car that would take them home, all of them together, a family that existed not because of genetics or legal documents, but because they'd chosen each other and fought to keep that choice. "Daddy," Emma said from her perch, on his shoulders, "are we going to be okay?" Noah looked at Sabrina, at the woman who'd learned to love bravely, despite knowing that love came with an expiration date, and realized that okay wasn't about certainty. It was about showing up for each other, whatever came next. "Yes, sweetheart," he said, "we're going to be okay." 6 months after the courthouse victory, Noah stood in the kitchen of their home. He'd stopped thinking of it as Sabrina's estate and started thinking of it as simply home, watching his family navigate the morning routine that had become as natural as breathing. Emma sat at the breakfast table helping Lucy with her math homework, their heads bent together over problems about fractions and percentages. Sabrina moved between the stove and the coffee maker, humming softly as she made pancakes shaped like hearts, a small tradition that had started when Lucy mentioned she liked knowing that breakfast was made with love. The new family portrait hung on the wall above the kitchen table, all 4 of them laughing at something Emma had said just as the photographer clicked the shutter. It captured them perfectly. not posed or formal, but caught in a moment of genuine joy. Lucy's bracelet was visible in the photo, the purple and green strands that had become a symbol of the connections that bound them together. "Noah," Sabrina said, sliding a plate of heart-shaped pancakes in front of him. "Dr. Kim called yesterday with the results from my latest cognitive assessment." The girls looked up from their homework, and Noah felt the familiar flutter of anxiety that accompanied any mention of Sabrina's condition. They'd been honest with Lucy and Emma about the diagnosis, explaining it in terms they could understand while emphasizing that love didn't disappear just because memory might. "Everything's stable," Sabrina continued, her smile genuine and relieved. "No changes from 6 months ago. Dr. Kim says that stress reduction and emotional well-being can sometimes slow progression in the early stages." "What's stress reduction?" Lucy asked, syrup dripping from her fork. "It means being happy and not worrying so much," Emma explained, with the authority of someone who'd become an expert on adult emotions through necessity. "Then we're really good at stress reduction," Lucy announced, returning to her pancakes with satisfaction. Noah caught Sabrina's eye across the table and saw his own wonder reflected there. They'd created something neither of them had thought possible. A family that functioned not in spite of its complications, but because of its honest acknowledgement of them. The morning routine continued with the comfortable chaos of school preparations. Emma couldn't find her library book. Lucy needed her science fair poster signed, and Sabrina was hunting for her car keys while simultaneously braiding Lucy's hair and checking her work email. Noah orchestrated the symphony of small crises with the ease of someone who'd learned that love was often most visible in the mundane moments. "Don't forget," Sabrina called as the girls gathered their backpacks. "Tonight is movie night. Lucy's choice." "Can we watch the one about the girl who talks to animals?" Lucy asked. Again, Emma groaned, but she was smiling. "Fine, but I get to pick next week." After the school run, Noah and Sabrina found themselves with a rare hour of quiet before their respective workdays began. They sat on the terrace with their coffee, watching the sunrise paint the garden in shades of gold and amber. "I've been thinking," Sabrina said, her voice soft in the morning stillness, "about what happens next." Noah's chest tightened automatically, but Sabrina's expression was peaceful rather than worried. "Not about the disease," she clarified quickly. "About us. About whether what we have is strong enough to build a real future on. What kind of future?" Sabrina reached into her pocket and pulled out a small velvet box, setting it on the table between them with hands that trembled slightly. "The kind where we stop pretending this is temporary," she said. "The kind where we make it official that we're choosing each other, for whatever time we have." Noah stared at the box, feeling the weight of everything it represented. Not just a proposal, but a declaration that love was worth choosing even when, especially when, you knew it came with an expiration date. "Sabrina, I know it's backwards," she said quickly. "I know I should let you propose, and I know the timing is complicated with everything we're facing, but I've learned that waiting for the perfect moment means missing the real moments, and this feels real." Noah opened the box to find a simple band that matched the one Sabrina was wearing, rings that spoke of partnership rather than possession, of choosing to build something together rather than completing something that was missing. "I love you," he said, taking the ring from the box and sliding it onto his finger. "I love you, and I love the family we've built, and I want to make it official too. Even knowing what you're signing up for, especially knowing what I'm signing up for." Noah reached across the table to take her hands. "Sarah taught me that love isn't about duration, it's about depth. I'd rather have 5 years of real love with you than 50 years of anything else." They were interrupted by the sound of running feet as Emma and Lucy burst through the terrace doors, having been dropped off early from their carpool. "Are you kissing?" Emma asked, with the delighted disgust of a 6-year-old who found adult romance. "Simultaneously fascinating and gross. We're getting married," Sabrina said, her voice bright with joy and tears. "Really?" Lucy's face lit up with the kind of pure happiness that made Noah understand why people fought so hard to protect childhood. Wonder. Really? Noah confirmed. If that's okay with you too. Will I get to be a bridesmaid? Emma asked. Will we still be sisters? Lucy added. You'll be whatever you want to be, Sabrina said, gathering both girls into her arms. You're stuck with us now, officially and permanently. Later that evening, after the girls had fallen asleep during the movie they'd supposedly chosen, Noah found himself in the quiet of his cottage reviewing the legal documents that made their unconventional family official. Adoption papers that made him Lucy's father in the eyes of the law. A will that ensured Emma and Lucy would always have each other, no matter what happened to the adults who loved them. Medical directives that gave Noah the authority to make decisions for Sabrina when she couldn't make them herself. The paperwork told the story of a love that was practical as well as passionate, built on the understanding that real commitment meant planning for the hard parts as well as celebrating the easy ones. His phone buzzed with a text from Marcus, heard through the grapevine that congratulations are in order. Happy for you, brother, Noah smiled, typing back. Thanks. Still scared, but good scared, best kind of scared. Sarah would be proud. The words hit Noah with unexpected force, not because they hurt, but because they felt true. Sarah would have understood this choice, would have recognized the courage it took to love someone new while honoring someone old. She would have adored Lucy's serious intelligence and Emma's generous heart. She would have seen that Noah hadn't. Replaced their family, he'd grown it. A soft knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. Sabrina stood on his doorstep in her pajamas, looking younger than her 36 years in the moonlight. Couldn't sleep, she said. Keep thinking about everything that had to go right for us to end up here. You mean everything that had to go wrong first, Noah said, opening the door wider to let her in. No, I mean right. Your wife had to be the kind of person who taught you how to love completely. I had to get sick at exactly the right time for you to save my life. Lucy had to need exactly what you could give her. Emma had to be brave enough to share you with people who needed you too. They sat together on his small couch, Sabrina curled against his side with the natural ease of someone who'd found her place in the world. Do you think we're being naive? She asked. Planning a future when mine is so uncertain? I think we're being human, Noah said, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. I think we're doing what people in love do. We're choosing hope over fear, even when fear would be easier. And if the disease progresses faster than we expect, if I start forgetting you, forgetting Lucy, then we'll deal with it together. We'll write things down, take videos, create reminders. We'll make sure you know you're loved even if you can't remember why. And if it gets really bad? If I become someone you don't recognize? Noah was quiet for a moment, thinking about the vows they'd write for their wedding, about the promises that mattered most when everything else fell away. Then I'll love the person you become, and I'll remember the person you were for both of us. That's what families do. We hold the memories for each other. Outside their window, the main house glowed with warm light, and Noah could picture the girls sleeping in their rooms. Emma with Mr. Elephant, Lucy with the collection of science books she insisted on keeping by her bed. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new questions about how to navigate a love story that had an uncertain ending. But tonight, sitting in the quiet with the woman who'd taught him that courage looked like choosing love anyway, Noah felt something he hadn't experienced since Sarah's death. Complete peace with an imperfect world. They'd built something remarkable from broken pieces. A family that existed because they'd been brave enough to believe that love could survive anything, even the knowledge of its own fragility. And if that wasn't a happy ending, Noah thought as Sabrina's breathing grew soft and steady against his chest, it was something even better. It was a happy beginning that would last exactly as long as it was meant to, and that would leave echoes in the lives they'd touched long after the last page was written.